Welcome to the Kansas State Board of Nursing, our special board meeting for Thursday, August 13, 2026. We'll proceed with the roll call. Jill Simons will do that.
Yes, when I call your name, if you could just respond with here or Ruth Burkhart,
Here.
Amy Garcia,
Here.
Tasha Fields,
Here.
okay, okay. Jobin Wright,
Here.
Ashley Weber,
Here.
Belinda Katz,
Here.
and Troy Spain.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jill. We have a quorum, so we'll proceed. I'm calling the meeting to order. Are there any additions or revisions to the board agenda for today?
Madam President, this is Adrian. We may need to add a motion to, I guess, reclarify the void committee membership.
Would you provide some details for that?
Absolutely. At the last meeting, there was the addition of a few members on that committee. However, one of the members, yourself, Ms. Burkhart, there's potentially a conflict now that you're in the agency position that you're in. So I think that we're going to need to go back, and I guess I'll look to legal counsel whether or not we need to nullify the first motion and add the additional member, or can we just make a motion and do that now?
Well, we need to add it to the agenda if you want to discuss it.
Okay.
Well, we'll proceed then. Would someone make a motion to revise the?
Madam President, I can make a motion. I can read the motion for a board
That
member.
would be great. Thank you, Jill.
You're welcome. Is there a board member that would make the following motion? I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I so move. Weber.
Do we have a second?
Fields will second.
Anyone that needs to abstain? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those not in favor say no. Okay, thank you. The motion passes. We'll move on to announcements.
Madam Chair, if I may, if we could add that at maybe as item D under unfinished business. Adrian?
Thank you. Right. All right, thank you very much. We will move on to announcements if there's no further discussion on that. Do we have any announcements that need to be made for the meeting today?
Madam President, the only announcement that I have is that the board members should be receiving an email any day now regarding the requirement for the cybersecurity education. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that there is going to be something sent here relatively soon.
Thank you, Adrian. And there'll be no open forum because we have no presenters that have been announced for the meeting today. So we can move on to the approval of the July 2026 minutes. You all have had an opportunity to review those. Any questions, any discussion on those minutes?
Adrian, I'm sorry, I don't think I got a copy of the minutes.
Jill, do you have those readily available that you can send to me?
Yeah, I can send it to her. Just 1 second.
Thank you, Jill.
I didn't get a copy either.
I was gonna say I did not either get a copy.
It's not in the board packet.
It's not.
So
No, because we don't put it in the board packet because they're not officially approved yet.
Yep.
So you will see where it shows that page still deliberately left blank, but we do have something that is sent to the board members. So I'm not sure why they didn't get it, but I can send it out. So who all didn't get it? Amy and Ashley?
I would send it to everybody again.
I didn't
Okay.
get it as well, Jill.
Okay, hold on just 1 second.
and we can move this item to the next meeting or to the end of this agenda.
Okay.
You just pass over this item right now and come back to it, Dr. Burkhart?
Yeah,
Would that be
that would be
okay?
great. Let's go
Okay.
ahead and do that. Let's put it at the very end,
Okay,
so that we can keep our minutes
Yes.
reviewed and approved going forward. Any additional discussion on that before we move on? Well, I would like to, I have a welcome letter that I would like to read to our new board members. And so please allow me a few minutes to do that. On behalf of the Kansas State Board of Nursing, it is my honor to welcome each of you as members of the interim board. Thank you for your willingness to dedicate your time, experience, and leadership to this important responsibility. Public service is both a privilege and a commitment, and your decision to serve during this pivotal time reflects your dedication to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Kansas. Since its establishment in 1913, the Kansas State Board of Nursing has remained committed to regulating the practice of nursing and the public interest while adapting to meet the changing needs of our profession and our state. The role of the board, a regulatory board, is to interpret and apply regulations based in statutes which have been approved by the legislature. The distinction between the agency, professional staff, and the board is truly a partnership in many ways. Agency staff are professional employees. They are in state government. The board has a separate but very important role. Today marks one of the most significant transitions in the board's history. With the passage of House Bill 2528, the appointment of an interim board, the transition to a new governance structure, the vacancy of the executive administrator position, and numerous operational changes underway, we have been entrusted with leading the agency through this period of transformation. While the work before us is substantial, it is also an opportunity. As the interim board, our responsibility is not only to address today's priorities, but also to establish a strong, stable foundation for the board that will follow us. We are committed to strengthening governance, ensuring statutory compliance, supporting the dedicated KSB and staff, and positioning the agency for long-term success. To the citizens of Kansas and the nursing community we serve, thank you for the trust and confidence that you place in this board. We recognize that every decision we make carries with it a responsibility to protect the public and uphold the integrity of the nursing profession. That trust will remain at the center of everything we do. I also want to express my sincere appreciation to the KSB and staff. During this period of transition, many have willingly assumed additional responsibilities while continuing to provide exceptional service under challenging circumstances. Their professionalism, resilience, and unwavering commitment to our mission have been instrumental in keeping the agency moving forward, and we are grateful for their professionalism and dedication. Although our service is temporary, the decisions we make will have a lasting impact. Let us approach this responsibility with transparency, collaboration, and thoughtful stewardship so that we leave the next board well prepared to continue serving the nursing profession and the people of Kansas. Again, thank you for accepting this call to serve. I look forward to working alongside of each of you as we guide the Kansas State Board of Nursing through this historic transition. Thank you. Any comments? Okay, thank you. Next will be our unfinished business. And our Director of Operations, Adrian Guerrero, will give us an update on House Bill 2528 and the void deadline. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We've been making a lot of progress on the implementation of House Bill 2528. I would mostly say the biggest part of it is working on the voids of the disciplinary actions. And I do want to thank all the staff for their hard work on this project, specifically Samantha Harrington, our disciplinary counsel, and Megan Barber, our legal assistant, who have really gone above and beyond the call of duty and are putting in lots of hours of dedicated work trying to meet these deadlines. Staff have undertaken a comprehensive review of all the historical records, of which roughly 33,031-ish is what they started out with. They have successfully sent notices to about 456 individuals and have sent several notifications to the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, the National Practitioner Data Bank, and the Office of Inspector General. We're continue working through that process as they continue to update those records, but we have met our required notification on that. We have approximately 420 or so left that may need some board review. We're working through that process, and actually we'll probably hit on this a little bit more when we talk about the void committee and the members who are on that committee. The larger global messaging, or what I call like the massive blast that's going to go out to members of the legislature, potential people that we've interacted with that we know of that may have received some of these orders, the Kansas courts, we're looking at some of the potential individuals of the media, et cetera, all of them that we can identify. We're going to try to do those a little bit closer to the end so that we're not just incrementally sending information as we go. We think it's going to be better suited to send that all in basically one big blast to those individuals. The staff have set up a website that's in staging where we can direct the public towards if they have any questions or if they need to maybe notify us. We've sent up a centralized email to collect that information. And so that's moving ahead nicely. Some of the licensing changes with the implementation of the late renewal period is a bit in a stage still because of the system changes that need to occur. And we're waiting until those temporary regulations are passed so that we're only making one change. But with that said, the licensing department has done a good job and they have a process in place to identify those individuals and are helping them accordingly so that they don't lapse out. The renewal notifications via the automated portions are both a manual and an automated process. I'm pleased to say that we have implemented the Nurses e-Notify proactive messaging. It is rolling out slowly across many thousands of people. And as of, I believe, a couple days ago, we have about 611 or so new subscribers to that service. So that's good. We are also sending notices as they get closer to the end of the month. That's a manual process the IT department's doing. They're sending those notices to the people that have not renewed yet and just basically making them aware of it per the requirements. So that's moving along nicely. The investigations and discipline portions that have the deadline of January 1 of 2027, Linda and her team are working diligently to identify all of those cases and investigations that can be looked at. I think we're going to have maybe more of an update in September on the progress of that. But she's looking to have those all completed, hopefully by the December board meeting so that we can, give you an update when you all meet during that period. As you know, the board transition for the interim board is as it's constituted now. And we're working to make sure that we can maintain the continuity and agency operations during this significant governance change. Clearly, we need to work just a little bit on our notifications for the board packets. One of the things that we traditionally do is we set up a state email so that those can be securely transmitted. And I think we're gonna maybe need to do that with the new members. So we'll work on that before the September meeting. Hopefully get that set up for you. For the technology and operations, it's business as usual. I mean, that's the one thing I do like to say is staff are really putting in a lot of efforts to make sure that the licensing, the verifications, the document management, education, discipline, all of that is just business as normal for us. We have not had a whole lot of complaints about people that are seeing delays as far as licensure is concerned. Rand provided me the quarterly audits and they're looking really great. So, we're pleased to see that that's going on pace with everything, even with all the change that's in place. Their team's doing a great job in that area. For stakeholder communications, one of the things that we've wanted to do is we wanted to make a big outreach, not just for like the e-notify, but also just to make some headway with different areas that maybe we were lacking a little bit previously. So we've had several calls and several meetings with elected officials, the Kansas Hospital Association, the Kansas Nurses Association, the Kansas Workforce Center, the Kansas School Nurses Association, the Kansas Association of Risk Quality Managers, a lot of other state agencies, and our PIO, Andy, has been reaching out and is going to try to do some presentations between some of the maybe larger employers and get individuals in an area where he can present some of the e-notify and just some of the updates for us. We're going to have a booth over at the KHA conference and maybe at State Fair. So we're doing that outreach just so that, if there are questions about House Bill 2528 or even the Senate bill, that we're in a place to address those as quickly as possible. And so that's basically right now what we've been doing with House Bill 2528. And I would stand for any questions.
So Adrian, this is Amy Garcia. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for the report. Nice report. Would you say that we are on target to meet the September 1st deadlines?
I would say that we are making great progress towards that, and we have every full intention of making the deadline as quickly as possible. We do need the assistance of the Void Committee to look at some of these documents and cases, and what we would like to do with those. We're going to open it up for your all's decision, but we would like to have the members of that committee, once we have that solidified at this meeting, either come to Topeka or do, a web Teams or something of that nature, and just go through them all. Samantha, she can chime in too, if she's on the call. Yeah, it looks like she is. Of her progress that she's been doing, identifying and making notes. We have a big spreadsheet that has all the information that's kind of color coordinated with some various colors depending on what it pertains to. But yes, the short of the answer is yes, we have every full intention of trying to make that happen.
I'm glad to hear that. I have one other point of clarification. So
Certainly.
you started with some numbers that there were about 3,031 files to review, and you've sent 456 letters. I think I understand that means that a large number of the cases you were able to review and move forward. They were simple issues like late on renewal. Other issues are more complicated. So can you confirm to us and to anyone else listening that a large number of those cases have been reviewed and we are down to just a few?
That is correct. They're getting down to the finite last ones that we need some input from the committee. And Sam has done a great job putting a lot of detail associated with each of those, each of those records in the list that we're doing, so that when those come up for discussions, you can quickly look at some of them and make a decision one way or the other, whether or not they need to be voided or altered or something to that effect. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where they're at right now.
we plan to address our progress towards meeting the uh, requirements of Senate Bill 2528 at each of the meetings in the future?
Yes, I think it would be good. One of the things I was going to talk about in my executive report is the next meeting will be our first chance actually in person, which will make this a little bit easier. Quite frankly, we've had to rush these 2 meetings for various things that had, some very specific things that needed to be taken care of quickly. It is not the traditional way that we onboard individuals and do the proper orientation and that sort of thing. That's not how I would have planned it if I had a perfect world. But, this September meeting there's going to be a lot of procedural things that occur, but I want to give a very detailed report of not only the status of the House bill and Senate bill that are out there, but also just where we are as an agency, because I think it's important for the board and the public and our elected officials to know what is going on currently, but also what is on the radar. We have some very big initiatives that have some pretty hefty price tags associated with them, and having the fee funds and those sorts of things available support that. And so I'm going to try to create some sort of a formalized report that kind of goes in depth, and obviously each meeting thereafter we'll do the traditional updates.
Thank you. That answers my questions.
And to clarify, Adrian, it sounds like there are sufficient resources to meet the September 1st deadline for House Bill 2528, but after that, to maintain good standing, at least with the intent of that bill, additional funding would be needed, or there is currently funding that needs to be continued to be supported to meet those requirements?
It's kind of a multi-part thing in that nature. As far as getting the notices and those sorts of things, yes, I think we have what we need to complete that project with the assistance of these ones that we need the board's input on. The logistics of doing it is really just simply mailing and sending notices. And if we miss one, there's bound to be somebody come up in there, that might have a case that was in there that maybe we didn't have information on. Obviously, we're going to look at those as they come up. But as far as meeting the requirements of House Bill 2528 going to the future, yes, the agency is going to need revenue for that. I made a fiscal request, or I should say the agency made a fiscal request to both the House and the Senate in regards to what we thought we needed to accomplish this and to maintain it. And so in order to maintain it, you have to have qualified professionals per the bill. And so, for example, you either need to contract with nurses of like education and experience, or you need to hire them. We do not have an advanced practice nurse on staff, for example. We also don't have a contract with one right now. That there is a process that the state has to go through in order to maintain those. And I would argue one of those is to actually pay them. So, I mean, we can't ask for volunteers to do this work. This is something that the state needs to provide. And the monies that are collected for this agency go to fulfill the mission. And I feel very strongly about that. If we're going to be required to secure the systems, to provide the systems, to enhance the systems, to staff the systems, for example, we are 8.5 people down. We have 8.5 people vacancies of an agency 27 FTEs. That is unsustainable. And, it's one of the things that you have to have fully qualified and competent individuals to run this agency. And, myself, I'm wearing multiple hats right now. So, I have some very strong feelings about that. Nurses pay their fees to run the agency. And I think that that's what that should be for. But it's the board and our elected officials and the governor's decision. But if we are going to maintain that level of operation and sustain it, it's going to take revenue.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian, for such a comprehensive answer. Does anyone else have any questions regarding the update on the House Bill 2528 or the void deadline or comments about that before we move on? No further comments or questions? Oh, I'm
Adrian,
sorry.
will you be coming back to the staffing deficits in your executive report? And will we have an opportunity to discuss at that time?
Certainly, I was going to give kind of a high level. I mean, you kind of got a little preview there. But I think in the September meeting is where I really wanted to put the dollars to the figures and everything. I'm doing quite a little comprehensive review of all of the positions and have been working with the state personnel division on that. And so we've made a lot of progress in that area. I mean, it's not all bad news. It's actually been some pretty good news. But I just want to bring it forward from a proper fiduciary responsibility that there was a recommendation to the legislature of what we thought we needed to run the agency. We could drop it down a little bit, but you know, I planned on doing a full debrief in the September meeting is what I really wanted to do, just so I'd have all the data available to me.
I think the board might like some confidence that those positions have been posted and we are moving forward on being whole as a staff.
That is the intent.
So
Yes,
they
for
are
sure.
posted or are not posted.
Well, there, for example, we are working with the AG's office on our disciplinary council full-time position. Now that is in our court to fill. However, they have graciously offered to co-post with us. And so I'm definitely going to take them up on that. Another positions, there are a few that are being reallocated and reevaluated. So those are actually over with the personnel department right now, which takes a little bit of time to do some review of those positions. I've also done an analysis where we've moved, I mean, this is a public meeting. Congratulations, Colton. He got a promotion. He's now running our eVoke system. So his position a few weeks ago that he was in. And so, I'm using proper analysis of any vacant positions to see if I need to shift it to another function, which we have done with a couple individuals. And so, I'm doing that proper diligence when something's open is to properly look at it and not just fill it just to fill it.
So how many positions do we have posted right now?
We just pulled down the investigator positions because those I'm having reviewed. We unfortunately had one posted for over 600 days and got no one. And so it's time to reevaluate. And part of my report to some individuals of the personnel department and others, Kansas is ranked 47th nationally as far as nursing compensations are concerned, and we pay below that trying to recruit investigators. And so we are in a market where we're competing against everyone, and paying $29 to $30 an hour is not going to get and keep a seasoned professional RN investigator. It's just not going to cut it. And so I have asked for a review of those positions, and that's what's been pulled off the internet. We also shifted what I called like a lift and shift, is where some people were actually promoted from within to different positions and reallocated and associated those positions. So now their positions became recently vacant, and I'm doing an analysis of those as well. That's what I'm proposing to the personnel department, and I've had several meetings with that. So at this time, we do not have the disciplinary position posted. The executive administrator position is another one of those that's in there that the board, probably the permanent board, but it's your decision as interim board, will need to interview and hire for that position as well. So there needs to be some discussion on that front as too. Long story short, I pulled down the ones because we just didn't get anybody to apply. The state doesn't compete with private sector, and it's hard to get them.
I would ask on behalf of the other board members and maybe the public that at each meeting, we talk about how many positions are open and are those positions yet posted? Just so that we really keep this front of mind, so that you can do your jobs.
And that's most appreciated to have the support. But I will say if depletion of the revenue funds continues or the threat thereof, that's what runs the agency. We're a 100% fee funded agency. And without the revenue, we can't pay for salaries and positions. So, I mean, we need to keep that front of mind as well, is the fiscal sustainability. And I will be working on the budget. The budget system opens up tomorrow, I believe, or maybe Saturday. So that's another reason that we're looking at these positions, is because I'm doing some financial forecasting of those vacancies to see if they can be upgraded essentially, so that we can actually recruit some talent that will stay with the agency.
Good. And look to your board to help with some of that justification. I think there are a number of members of the board who have faced similar problems in the private sector. So
Any help would be wonderful, even if just marketing open positions, I welcome it.
Thank you. All pertinent questions and comments. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Adrian.
Mhm.
Any additional discussion on that topic? If not, we'll move on to our next item under unfinished business, and that is our Cora. And I've asked Adrian also to do a quick overview on the impact of what Cora is and the impact of that to KSBN. Thank you, Adrian.
Well, absolutely. And thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Pleased to speak about this topic. It was discussed at the last meeting where you all had a brief orientation to the Kansas Open Meetings Act and the Kansas Open Records Act, and the importance of it for citizens of the state. Our agency does adhere to those requirements and make every effort possible to meet all of the tight timelines that are associated therein. We've been very fortunate to have the assistance of Lisa and Joseph, our general counsels, and doing some education for us. And I will say Nicole as well, who's not our general counsel anymore, that have helped us with various education sessions for both myself and Andy. And we are looking forward to trying to make progress in this area to make it even more expeditious and get the information out quickly to the individuals that ask for it. One of the things that we have done, it's a bit like doing an overhaul on the engine while the car is driving down the street. And that we were doing open records requests via a system that was called ArcCase. It was basically an electronic process where individuals could fill out and request the information, and it helped us track it, et cetera. We found that was a bit problematic in meeting the spirit of the law, and then also how we will get that from point A to point B to point C. So we opted to forego and basically shut down that solution and have retooled a process internally. We are learning along with everybody else the ins and outs of the Kansas Open Records Act and how we can make that work a little bit more seamlessly internally. Andy has done a great job getting information and trying to learn these new processes and create some documents for us to keep track. He's sending weekly reminders. I will say that the requests are going up tremendously. And again, you heard the staffing size. We have shifted basically 1.5 people to basically work on this process for us. We have Stephanie Wiley, who works for Linda's area, that is helping with some of these requests and gathering them and, gathering all the pertinent information. But we're working towards creating a more streamlined process so that we can get things out quickly and expeditiously. And I don't know, Andy, do you have anything you'd like to add to that, since you've been spearheading this effort for us?
I think you did just fine, Adrian. I don't need to add anything else.
Okay. And then I will also maybe lean towards our legal counsel, who provided us some training. I don't know if you have any words of comment or anything you'd like to say with regards to that.
I'm going to say that it's a work in progress. We find periodically that there are places that need to be inspected, if you will, to make sure that we modify some procedures. But on the whole, generally, I think things are the board's ability to respond is improving. We just need to keep working at it to make sure that there are no undue delays in identifying core requests, providing 3-day letters, and then providing records in as short a period of time as possible, with gathering them, redacting them, and otherwise reviewing them. And that's critical under the CORA. So we're making some progress, but I think there's more progress to be made.
And I do want to again thank Lisa, especially. She's an expert in this field, so it's been wonderful to have her resource available to us. And I'm sure she's getting tired of seeing all our emails, but she's been very patient with us. So one of the other things that we did actually hold, I guess it would have been last week, was a full training and a bit of a little questionnaire for staff to fill out. We gave them various scenarios and, had them fill in the answers and walk through that process, just to kind of get them to think differently. Even things as simple as when the mail comes in from the office and how we route it to different departments. We're looking at it at that level. It's not just try to get these things out in 3 days sort of thing. We're looking at a deep dive of the entire process. So we're learning along the way, and we have found areas where we can improve, and that's okay. That's how you get better. So one of the areas that we would like to do is maybe kind of at each meeting give some sort of an update on some of these statistics. We're coming from 2 different systems. So we're working on making this a little more seamless. And I guess I would be open to the board's thought of what you would like to see in this area, or are you okay with it and don't want any more information? We're open either way.
Any comments or questions on that? Well, Adrian, I think it's, oh, I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just saying, I think it's appropriate to give the board an update on any delays, and reasons for that. We understand that information is not always immediately available, and there are delays on your end in getting that information. I think the board would be wanting to know how that's tracked and who is responsible for it, and then how the outcome of that is communicated. Board, please feel free to offer additional comments on that and questions.
I think the data that you prepared for us shows that you're really focused on improving, and there is a decrease in the time to produce. I was a bit concerned that there were some requests going on more than 6 months to a year old. Is it the nature of what was asked for, or there are some requests that are pending from the first and second quarter of this year?
I'm in the memo that we drafted. I believe that the I don't remember any of them being that long in terms of the actual days. I think our average days of response was 13 days for, and we did have a couple that were really long because we've been kind of in this in between of whether a case is void or whether it's not void. And so that's a, it's a moving target in terms of how we navigate those records in terms of what's public and what's not public. I think one of the things that I would celebrate is that we made a decision, Adrian made a decision that we're no longer charging for the mailing address Excel spreadsheet. So what we're seeing is instead of having to wait for people to pay for that, and which would add another week or two or maybe 3 between the time that they're invoiced and the time we receive payment, we're basically able to respond to them within 1 or 2 days, maybe the same day. So we really have been very customer focused and streamlined that process. It gives people, I think it's a great example of how this agency has been focused on what the customer needs to try and get information to nurses.
The report you gave us gives me confidence that you're paying the right level of attention. And I don't see that any additional data is needed, but others may have a different point of view.
Not at this time. For me, it would just be periodic updates. Because there are factors beyond your control as an agency, and I believe the board needs to know what those factors would be, and then how that might impact the agency. Of course, any feedback from legal counsel on that would be of significance. I think that would be important to have. But agreed, Amy, in terms of this kind of data, I think this was very helpful. And Adrian and Andy, thank you for bringing that to our
Madam
attention.
President and Adrian, if I might just add, I want to thank you for the request for information and bringing, you basically allowed us to write this section of our annual report a quarter early. We provide this information in our annual report each year. And so now I can tell Adrian I already got that assignment done, and you've already looked at it. And so we have been monitoring this, and this has been a priority. And thank you for your continued support of our work.
Right. And I think it was important that we had a follow-up after our initial board meeting. This was such a high priority issue. All right. Well, thank you. And then any other comments or discussion on Cora metrics or anything in that area? If not, we'll move on to the temp and permanent regs. I know you have some updates on that, Andy and Adrian, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. In your packet, you should see a memorandum that Andy drafted up of some of the work that's been done. Excuse me, on the preparation of the temp and permanent regulations. For those that don't know, the state actually is in the middle of a transition to a new system for posting these type of and getting approvals. That's called ESPERS, and so we happened to land it right when it was going live. So there has been a few little hiccups along the way with the state as they iron out the processes to get that done. But I think for the most part, we're making pretty good progress there. I do want to give credit to Andy. He's done a great job keeping me in the loop, working with the staff, and he's created a really good little guide down at the bottom that I really value. So I want to give him a chance to give us an update, a verbal update of what you've provided, Andy.
There's nothing more. Thank you, Adrian and Madam President. there's nothing that is a better example of what it means to be a regulatory agency than to be reviewing regulations. This is, and especially in light of House Bill 2528, and I might also note Senate Bill 33-4. The page 19 gives you kind of a one-page scorecard of kind of what we've identified as our workload. And I'm really grateful for the two-step. We've kind of identified a four-step process, but it's two steps, two phases, one on the temporary and then one on the permanent. And the temporary process gives us a chance to get some specific language in front of the department administration and get their feedback, and then get input from the Office of the Attorney General, and then finally from the budget director. And once we get that, then we can jump into the permanent regs, which basically is the same process. However, temporary regs are only effective for 120 days, but the permanent regs then require about a 60-day public feedback period with a hearing, and it's a good kind of, I call it a dress rehearsal. So this information that's in your packet is our plan is then to keep moving forward. Adrian referenced the temporary reg for the new fees for the late renewal period and how that matches up and lines up with the reinstatement and the total reinstatement fee, and then the renewal fee plus the late renewal fee. And once that temp is in place, then we can start implementing that and move into the permanent reg that would take over. We have, I want to celebrate that Janelle has done a great job of helping getting the new regs for, I believe it's 60-2-13 in terms of the requirements for nursing programs. I know this is an important topic for nurse program educators, administrators, and so we're making progress in that area. I think there will always be opportunities for improvement, and one of the things I've learned in working with the board now for about a year and a half is that these are just great examples for us to partner and to learn from our key stakeholders. And I'm really looking forward to the feedback period and seeing how our legislators and the general public and nurses and other stakeholders have to say about these changes in regulations. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Sorry, I realized I couldn't get myself unmuted here. I said, Andy, this is great. Thank you. I especially appreciate the table that you provided so that we had a snapshot. This is very helpful. And
The
thank you for your
percentages are
work
a
on
little
this.
lower than I thought they would be come August, but there's been a few other distractions, not only with Espers, but with us trying to just know what changes we need and want to make. I think it gives you a scorecard, and you can see we've made progress in the last 2 months.
Yeah, there has been a lot going on. I think we can all recognize that. So thank you. All right.
And Adrian I didn't give him a heads up on this, but I believe that transparency and disclosure is 99% of the law. And you might notice that there's another Martin on your screen. And if you haven't realized it, Janelle Martin and Andy Martin are married. So, and we were hired at very different times, but I just want you to be aware that there are two Martins here, and I just want to be open. And I'm very grateful that my wife recruited me to the board. So anyway.
Thank you, Andy. Adrian, did you have any additional comments on temp and perm regs?
No, other than we're just looking forward to getting those going. That's part of what will help me finish another part of House Bill 2528 in terms of changing the information system to work more seamless. So this is good progress.
Great, great. Thank you. We can move on now. We have placed the Void Committee. Some additional information on that. Adrian, I'm going to ask you to do that. And then to confirm with our legal counsel that we do need to proceed or not with a call for a motion and a vote. So Adrian, I'm turning that over to you. Thank you.
Yes, just to kind of to debrief of what we said a little bit earlier. Essentially, what was it, the 400 and some odd additional cases that we need a committee to look at to help us finish out the void notifications. One of those is at the last meeting, special meeting that we had, a void committee was established. However, at the time, it was established with Dr. Burkhart on the committee. And since she's in the role that she's in now, that might need to be altered. And so I guess I would look to legal counsel whether or not we need to, how that works. Do they need to nullify the first motion and then create a new one, or do they?
I think all we really need to do here, Madam Chair, is just to simply clarify the members of the Void Committee. I think we did that last time, but it was unclear on the record exactly who it was. So those of you who agreed to serve on the Void Committee, if you could like raise your hand or otherwise indicate that you agreed to serve on the Void Committee, and then we can just simply, I guess, ratify those members. The reason Dr. Burkhart couldn't serve and cannot serve is there is a possibility the decisions made by the Void Committee will actually require some kind of vote and action that could be appealed.
I think she froze.
Delegated the authority to act as the presiding officer of the agency head to make decisions on what should happen if there was a motion for reconsideration. So she cannot vote or act on something and then turn around and also vote on act on a request for reconsideration. That would be a conflict. And to the extent that that happened in the past, that was not the way it should have happened. And we want to make sure that we correct it. So that's the reason for wanting to clarify who is on the Void Committee now. And if we can't clarify that now, then we simply need to get people to volunteer, 3 people, not Dr. Burkhart, to agree to serve on the committee. So I think Board Member Garcia was one of the people that agreed to do it, but folks, correct me if I'm wrong. We just need 3 people, it's better if it's 3, you could get by with 2 if you had to, but if you each did not agree, that stymies the process. So it's better if it's at least 3. So 3 volunteers. It's a short-term gig. So I see Ashley Weber. Thank you, Ashley. Who else is willing to volunteer?
I think we had
I see Tasha. So, and one more person.
Can we ask, would it be appropriate to have a member of the investigative committee? I believe Ms. Katz is the chair, right?
No,
So we
and
cannot
she's
do
not
that.
the chair. No, I think
Okay.
you want this to be separate. The investigative committee already has to make decisions on other things. So
Okay.
I think you want to, it's okay
Wanna
if
keep it
it's
separate.
investigative committee members, but it cannot be Dr. Burkhart.
Right.
Okay. So
And Adrian, can you elaborate just a little bit more about this committee? What was, maybe I didn't hear it
Essentially-
fully.
Okay, essentially, when we broke down the organization of some of the clear voids. So, for example, just to paraphrase this is not exact language, but those that had issues with this continuing nursing education, or maybe had an unlicensed practice, those were clear cut, or what we called easy, or the green voids. Those were real easy for us to determine internally whether or not they were going to be voided. We also had some that we moved to what we called like a yellow color, which were maybe borderline. So maybe they had a CNE violation, or maybe they had a unlicensed practice, but then there was some sort of other violation, whether or not it had something to do with a dependency or, even worse. Clearly, you don't want to avoid, especially if there was patient harm, you wouldn't want to avoid that case. But if they happen to have unlicensed practice or something during that period, just because that was to be voided doesn't essentially, quote unquote, get them off the hook for the more serious violation. And so that's some of these that we needed to iron out. Some of them are borderline. There were some clear ones that just, yes, they're not eligible. Those were pretty easy to figure out as well. And I don't know, Samantha, if you're on, if you wish to chime in.
If I may, just to cut to the chase to clarify. So there are cases that had failed to timely renew and some other a charge that put the public at risk. It's easy to decide what to do with the one, but what to do with the other is less clear. And so what we're looking for is board members to help staff members decide, should that other charge go away or should it stay in place?
Okay.
And so that's what you would be doing.
I am on the investigation committee, but I don't mind being on this committee as well.
Okay, so I see 3. I see, I think that's what we need. So Madam Chair, I think the motion would be to make clear that the void committee consists of Ashley Weber, Tasha Fields, and Jobin Reith. If somebody's willing to make that motion.
Thank you, General Counsel. So who would like to make a motion so we can move this forward?
I'll make the motion, Katz.
Okay. And
See a second.
that was
Any-
Ms. Garcia. Okay, thank you. Okay, there you go.
Any
It's properly set
discussion?
up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
No, you have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course.
That's okay.
Of course, we have to vote. All right, all in favor, say yes.
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 And all those opposed, say no. And any abstentions? Okay, now it passes. Thank you. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa, for the
Mhm.
help with that. We did need guidance with that. I believe we're ready to move on, if no further discussion, to our new business. And we will have an update now from Amy Garcia with the Education Committee. Thank you, Amy.
The small but mighty new Education Committee met on July 22nd. We completed business that had been started by the last Education Committee. When we meet again and approve the minutes, those will be posted on the portal. We've identified a need for orientation for committee members and a need to recruit non-board members to join the Education Committee. I believe we need an LPN, an ADN, a BSN, and an APRN to raise their hand and work with us on the committee. We are working on an agenda for September. Are there specific questions about the actions we took? Or I'm not sure what you're looking for in terms of a report.
Thank you, Amy. That was the report. And Lisa, I don't know if you would like to give some background on the Education Committee, the non-board members, or you want to move that to another time?
So Janelle maybe can talk about non-board members. She maybe knows a little bit more about that. One of the next items up is a discussion of the KSBN articles where the Education Committee is mentioned and what it could do. That was what it could do before this board voted to give the Education Committee more authority to act. And so that was just going to be a brief discussion, but I think Janelle can tell you if this committee needs additional members, there has to be a statutory basis for it. We can't just add people, because part of the thing is they may not be covered by the Tort Claims Act. So if there's a statutory basis to add people, if it's required by law, then that can happen. Otherwise, the members of the committee are members of the board. And I think Janelle can maybe try and clarify that for us, if there is a statutory basis to add people and what their statutory authority is. If you want people just because, that won't be enough.
I think we need some subject matter expertise
There you go.
in education. Yes.
And Madam President, if I may,
Hi, Jen.
Amy is absolutely correct in that the reason that the board committee was expanded to include non-board members is because those are our subject matter experts. The board decided per the articles and a basis in when you're making decisions about educational programs, even though we do have 2 education members that by statute are on the board. Some other states use advisory committees. They have different capacities where they use those subject matter experts to make sure that the members of the board who are making those final decisions have the information they need and can ask questions of those who are doing the work, basically. It's not that those that are on the board who are education members, which we have a couple of those here, don't have some expertise, but it's hard to have all the expertise, just like anything else that requires that level of professional knowledge and judgment. So we have pre-licensure programs, we have graduate programs. It's just like we need RNs on the board, we need LPNs on the board, we need APRNs on the board. This is the same thing. We have programs that cover all of those levels, and there are might be some differences in those non-board members can help us focus on when we need to know those things. And so that's been the previous grounds for having that. And I know there was a question about, how the articles fit under the statute and regulations for the board, but I would say that those are why they're necessary, and why I think why they have been there for all the years that they have been there. And those committee members have served as approval, as recommending. So it has not been an approval body in the past. And I believe that's what Mendoza was saying too, is that we do probably need to adjust how we've done that. We've not had the issue come up, but when the full board makes the final decisions, then there is no appeal process for any of the programs or educational things that come up through the committee. So there might be some need for some changes in how those articles that we've used before, or what new articles the board might want to put in place. So those are just a couple things that all the other committees do have review and approval authority. So we don't know how those committees will come forward with the new board, if that stays the same, but we do know the education committee probably needs to come up to speed with that as well, in order to be able to, as we were talking about earlier, make those decisions and also have the right path for those things beyond the committee decision. So that's what I have. If you have any other questions, I'm glad to answer, but.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion we're going to have, because what I just heard from Janelle, and correct me if I'm wrong, Janelle, there is no statutory basis to add non-board members to any committee. And that creates a problem for the board, a liability problem for the board. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, because it's a legal concern, but it would be clear non-board members are not covered by the Tort Claims Act. So even if the board had adopted a procedure under its quote unquote articles, it's not a statutory basis that these additional folks serve. And so I have a concern about that. The way this is, the Education Committee is set up now, it has authority to make decisions. It can seek information from staff. It can get staff to get the information and so forth, and then it can act. Non-board members do not have a right to vote. They don't have a right to have a say in how the board decides to operate or a committee decides to operate. Everything cannot flow up to the full board for two reasons. Number one, if you're discussing it in committee and then you have to turn around and discuss it at the full board, that's not probably a good use of your time and your resources. Number two, if the full board makes a decision, you have excluded all of yourselves from ever acting on any appeal that there might be under the Kansas Judicial Review Act. Pardon me, Janelle?
Nothing. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I had something else buzz.
Okay. Either under the Kansas Judicial Review Act or the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act. There may be appeal rights there. So if you all are involved in it, none of you can act as a presiding officer or the agency head to act on a motion for reconsideration on an appeal from something under the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act. You've created a conflict, and that was an inherent conflict in how you were doing it before. I don't know why that wasn't recognized. It doesn't make a difference at this point because the problem is now identified. And so the Education Committee needs to act, make decisions, and leave the rest of the board out of making those decisions so that Dr. Burkhart is protected and can make decisions. That's the reason that the authority that was delegated to the committee was delegated the way it was, to set the committee up properly to make decisions and to leave other people free to act as a hearing officer or as a presiding officer if necessary.
Then
So,
I would suggest that as we fill the entire 11 positions of the board, that
well,
there
yes,
we're at 7 right now.
right.
We've got 4 positions left
Right.
to come.
Unfortunately, that's the governor's prerogative. That's not our prerogative. And so
Right.
we may be acting at a deficit for a while. So I can't control that. The board can't control that, other than the board could certainly communicate with the governor's office or ask Adrian to communicate with the governor's office. But whether or not and how the governor chooses to do that, that's her prerogative.
Janelle, you have your hand up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. If I may, Madam President, a couple other things I would add to that. Thank you, Lisa, for clarifying that. But I just know from the way education works, I mean, something to think about. And as we think about this, it still is important to recognize that expertise in helping I understand the difference between what we were doing before and what we want of the Education Committee now, but the ability to have that advisory piece for the committee, I think, is still very important. And if you look at any national nursing organization, and I would say pretty much almost every other board, they have a way to do that, whether it's an education committee, the board, if that's out, we can't do it that way. There are other ways to do that, to be able to get those subject matter experts in the room with the education committee, even if they are the ones that need to make that final decision. I just think it's really important to keep putting that out there, that I think that's an important piece of where we're going, because I think our public, our administrators, we have a lot of experts out there, and when they have their things coming before the board, they want to know they have input and subject matter experts that are able to answer questions for them, and help in that process.
Madam Chair, if I may, I certainly understand that. We're going to have to probably take a step back here and look at ways that can be accomplished.
Mhm.
We may not be able to accomplish that immediately. It may have to end up waiting until there is a full board appointed, and then you can rely on board members to help fulfill that function. In the meantime, you can always ask staff to identify or search out information for you. I think this is the real difficulty of what is essentially a caretaker board. You're maybe not going to have all the resources that you need to be able to fulfill all the functions. And so you may have to focus narrowly on some things for a while. So we can certainly look at what are ways that you can include at some kind of advisory members, but I don't know if we'll have that accomplished by the next meeting, but we can certainly have that as something that we could begin to look at, so that whatever we do, we protect them and we protect the board, because there's no sense in asking people to serve in some advisory capacity and then leave them hanging out there without any kind of protection from liability. And that would be the legal concern.
Yeah, to clarify, Lisa, if we had an advisory SMEs, subject matter experts, and they didn't have voting capacity, but they could make comments at the education committee meetings to ask pertinent questions to clarify compliance with the regulations and to flesh some of that out. Would that be acceptable for a role of an advisory SME?
I'm not certain. I'm going to have to do, it's going to take some really serious looking. I'll have to be honest, other boards and commissions have attempted this and it hasn't worked. That hasn't been permitted. So we need to look very carefully at it. I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to promise something that I can't later on support. I think we have seen now where that might have not been what it needed to be. And I don't want to perpetuate that for the board. So I'm going to have to do some research on this and talk to my deputy about it. And then I'll be able to maybe have more information for the board. I will try for the next board meeting to be able to explain what could happen.
Lisa, thank you. And I know Adrian has his hand up, but I want to say one thing before Adrian. Janelle, I know you have a plan in place. We need to assure Amy that the education committee will not be without resources. So would you explain what your plan is, and then we'll go to Adrian. Thank you.
I'm assuming, Madam President, you're talking about the plan for the site visits surveys that we need to do.
Yes.
So two big things for the education committee that are our job and our responsibility, or for education, are the site surveys that we do for programs to make sure that their reapprovals can happen. Some of them are just in reapproval status. Some of them are in other statuses where we're doing focus follow-up for very specific reasons. And so I have 7 of those coming up. Without the resources of the non-board members and having new committee members who've not ever done that, I never do a site survey by myself. We've determined that is, the board has always determined in the past that they do not want just one person. That I've always taken, it's always been their responsibility. So right now I don't have those resources, because the rest of the non-board members are gone. And my 2 education members on the board, one is the president and with other responsibilities. And I have the rest of the members who you have to be a nurse to do the site survey visit. So even though we have a public member on the education committee, which is great, but they aren't eligible to do the visits. So there would have to be further orientation for those folks that have not ever done site surveys for the board. That could be an additional resource, but I have needs that start in September. So Adrian, and he may address this, his hand is up on how we're planning to do that. The other piece that I don't really have a plan for is the other piece that is that when schools need major curriculum changes, they're required by statute and regulation to bring those to the board. That's a decision that the board has to, or committee has always looked at, reviewed to make sure they're sound decisions and either approved or not approved those. And right now, I'm not sure with what we have, whether we feel like we have, that's where the advisory subject matter experts are really important. So I don't know right now. I don't think we have any coming for the September meeting that I have in my hands right now. So it may not be a plan for September that we have to address, but it is something that they can't move on with what they need for their programs without those approvals. So that's why I think it's important that we address it as soon as we can. But in terms of the site surveys, Adrian, would you like me to talk about that, or was that something you wanted to? We
please,
have
go
a
ahead.
plan. Okay, we have a plan in place that we have a couple of temp positions that we've been able to affirm with human resources that we can utilize. So basically what we will do is do contracts. We have 2 or 3 people in mind. One we have for sure who have previous education experience, have either been a board member and done site surveys or have other experience with educational nursing site surveys to come and help me do those visits. So at least for the first 2 or 3, I think we have the resources to cover that. And I think I know I haven't responded to Amy maybe as directly, but we will have orientation for the other members. So that could become a possibility for other members of the board to be able to work with us on those in the future. It's just, we had a more immediate need. It's hard to get everybody up to speed by the middle of September, but that's the plan for now.
Were you planning for, or Tasha to go with you on those visits?
I'm sorry.
On the
For who?
visits coming up in September, were you planning to bring one of the education committee members with you?
I had not at this point, but since nobody's had orientation and we had not discussed that, that's why we were trying to put something in place where I would know we at least had somebody. Because if I can take a new board member out with us as an orientee. That's been part of our process in the past. If we've had somebody who's never done survey visits and understanding the regulations, we usually have 2 of us that are familiar with that, bring somebody along for their orientation, as well as just whatever we do in the background for orientation, so that they could do future site visits on their own.
Okay, I will tell you, I've got 10 years of teaching experience.
Okay.
And have experience with surveying in other settings.
Okay. So that's something we haven't talked about. So.
Right. We haven't talked yet. So, yeah.
So having said that, we at least have at least one other person. Like I said, we have 7 visits, and it's kind of been our we try to spread that out because you all have other jobs as well. And so we will do what we can to support what we can with the board, and then also have, because in the past too, we have sent 2 staff people out to do the job if they have the education experience and the orientation for site surveys. We have had 2 staff do it in the past when a board member has not been available. I think it's a matter of we always want at least 2, and in some visits we've taken up to 3, depending on the severity or what's going on, what we need to be able to put eyes on. So having that availability will help us a lot. I think having said that, yes, it's just a matter of orienting the ones that are eligible to do site surveys to the process, to the regulations that we're primarily looking at, and familiar with the paperwork that we do when we go out and the reports that we give to the board.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. Amy, did you have any questions, or anyone else before we move to Adrian? He's had his hand up, and then Ashley and Troy.
I think
Um,
Ms.
What are their
Mendoza had a
questions next?
comment? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, I believe Ms. Mendoza had a comment real quick on that.
If I may, before we jump to Adrian, I think the
Thank
board
you.
should know and understand, every board has sort of this problem. They're taking people who have some experience or maybe no experience and getting them to learn about the law and to learn about how to accomplish the board's functions. And so, as Janelle says, you get orientation, people can be trained, and the board members can step up, and it sounds like that's exactly what everybody is trying to do. So I think there is a way to cover this that is still going to mean that you meet your statutory obligations. It may not be as nice and neat and tidy as it is when you get to have other people and just pull them in and do things, but it still means that you can accomplish the work of the board, and that's the most important thing. I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I will say before we go to Adrian, Lisa, to support the issue though of some real subject matter experts for the education committee on the site surveys, because I am an educator and an educational administrator and have been on quite a few surveys. You really do have to have some experts. So those that do not have a background in nursing education at the pre-licensure level, especially, it's going to be quite a long learning curve. And there will always need to be people that have that level of expertise. So I do want to put that out there. I think we're all in agreement that there's a way to work around this, but that we do need people that really know the business. All right, Adrian, sorry for the delay, but thank
Oh,
you
no
for your
worries.
patience.
No worries. Just wanted to give a brief little comment to something that was brought up earlier about the adding additional members. I did find out, I think it was last week, that the appointments director of the governor's office, who we've been working with, is now departed state employment for other endeavors. And that's pretty common as we go into an election season, that sort of thing happens. So just want to reiterate that, we're operating with what we have now. I keep in very frequent contact with the governor's office and the appointments directors. And so if anything were to change, certainly we would entertain that. But I think we just do need to kind of continue on, as Lisa said, we're a caretaker board. We're keeping the lights on, getting the trains running on time, doing our due diligence. And that's what I do love about working with nursing in particular, is where there's a will, there's a way. And so if we, individuals will step up, we are looking at temporary type positions of people that have expertise. That's another area of the HR stuff that I've been working on. So, I appreciate the support. I appreciate the volunteering. This is great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, did Troy, because we have Ashley, and then did Troy still have his hand up? I'm looking for.
No, I believe what I was going to mention was covered by council. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Troy. Thank you for your patience. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I understand things a little bit more clearly. Our articles that we have, Article 7 under committees, there is specific language about non-board members being appointed. And so is that a mismatch with the statutory regulations? In that's where we're having an issue right now, because our articles say that we can do a thing, but statutorily we cannot do the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Without
Thank you,
specific
Ashley.
metrics being
Right.
met.
That-
Okay.
That's actually a very good question. Yeah, it's not that the statutes prevent you, it's what the statutes say about whether or not somebody who's a volunteer doing something is entitled to any kind of protection from liability under the Tort Claims Act.
Right.
And that's the part I have a concern about. Through the board can attempt to do whatever, but that doesn't change what the law is under the Tort Claims Act and who's
Right.
entitled to representation.
Right.
And so that's sort of part of the larger conversation the board needs to have about the articles, because just jumping ahead
Okay.
briefly, the board decided, a previous board decided to do certain things with the articles. And honestly, I haven't plowed through all of them yet, but I have questions about whether or not the board even has authority to do some of the things that are in the articles. And that's sort of, it came to a head here with the education committee. And I understand why the board wanted to do that and the need for subject matter experts. But whether or not there is any kind of protection from liability is a very serious question I have. And I'm not, some of the other articles that I've looked at, I'm not certain that the board is even following those now. And at best, the board should maybe have a committee that starts to look at them. But as I say, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. The bottom line with the articles is probably maybe you want to set those aside and let a future board decide how that should operate. But again, that's just jumping ahead a bit.
Seems
sorry,
like those
Madam
might
Chair.
need a review.
Yes. Actually, that's a great question. Actually, it's our KSB and articles discussion, which would be our general counsel and
Right.
Adrian. And I think it would be helpful, Lisa and Adrian, if the board had more information about those articles, if there could be some sort of a document that spelled out what each one was about. and some of the legal questions and concerns about each of them, because that would help us make our decision. Obviously, we're not going to do that today.
Right.
Today, we're learning about it so that
Mhm.
we understand it better, but that would be my request. Board members, do you have any other questions, suggestions on this topic before we let Adrian and General Counsel move further into that?
Those articles are public on our website, correct?
Yeah.
So we should all have access to them actively
Yes.
to review.
Yes. And I think in the agenda links to them so that you can pull
Right.
them up.
Yes, it does.
And Adrian, if you want to start, or it's entirely, you can go or I can go. I think I've already kind of spilled the beans on what I was going to say.
A good segue.
Great segue. Certainly, yes. I think I guess we're ready to move on, right, to this discussion. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, for the opportunity to discuss this. I've been with KSBN for 26 years now, and I think these articles maybe came into play probably a year after I started. Essentially, they're the governing bylaws for the way that the board worked, and may or may not have had some sort of statutory or regulatory controls associated with them. And so during our initial discussion, as all of the transition and everything started to occur, a review of this particular document, for those of you that are online, if you don't have access to the agenda, if you go to our website at ksbn.kansas.gov, click on resources, go down to administrative resources, and then KSBN articles. This is the document that we're talking about. And essentially it does discuss how committees and certain functions of the board are laid out. And that in and of itself is what kind of brought this up. And I think at this point, I'll definitely tip it over to Lisa.
Okay, so I think if you have it pulled up, you can even see a lot of the stuff that's in, for example, the name and location, the purpose and functions, all that's statutory, or it's simply available on the web. There's no reason to adopt that. The board doesn't need to adopt any bylaws to function. It has statutory authority, it has regulatory authority. And so adopting something like this may in fact hamper it or hamstring its ability to function freely as it needs to, especially in a time transition. So already with the education committee, the board essentially created a whole new education committee, a whole new process outside these articles to operate. And honestly, it needed to do that because the education committee now has specific authority to act and to vote and to make decisions that don't have to go to the full board. And that's the way it needed to operate. So I think a lot of these things are just merely repetition of statutory authority or regulatory authority. And some of it says it was last revised in June of 24, but if you look under purpose and functions, section 2, it's citing a 1997 supplement to the statutes. That's so far outdated that it doesn't make sense that that wasn't corrected in 2024. So I think throughout looking at this, under Article 3 membership, it just simply recites the statutory authority. I mean, there's no reason for doing that. And again, it might be outdated. So I think if we had the opportunity to go through it and spend some time looking at this, I think we would find that you don't need the bulk of these. And honestly, the board does not need bylaws to perform its statutory functions. And so that may be something completely new and different for the board to think about, but this is the right board to maybe start thinking about it, because what you really need to start thinking about is, what are you passing on as a caretaker board? What are you passing on to a permanent board in January? What do you want them to have and to know and understand about how this board operates and what its functions and responsibilities by law are, not additional ones that are imposed on it by the board, but the ones that are imposed by law, because honestly, that's the most important thing for the board to be aware of. It's statutory and regulatory authority, and that's, I think, where you want to focus. So Adrian and I can certainly plow through this and tell you, honestly, the document you would get back would probably be this red line version that is strikes through the bulk of it. But I'm happy to undertake that review because I want the board to have the freedom to act as it needs to and not to be held back by something that a previous board adopted and this board never considered. And the previous board may not have understood what kinds of considerations that were there, maybe merely had just adopted it because that's what the boards have done in the past. So I'm trying to look out to give you the broadest access to the authority that you currently have under law. That's the reason for me to raise concerns about the articles and to suggest that we really need to look very carefully at them.
Thank you, Lisa, and I appreciate that. Your recommendations would be very helpful, I think, for the board. Ashley, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so thank you for all of that information. I have a question that might be brazen, but do we have to have the articles or can we just get rid of them? Because I'm afraid that if we were to actually go line by line in this, you're right. It's quite the regurgitation of the statutes that we already live by. And so I don't know if others have this experience in their practice in life, but the more policies and procedures and things that we have to live by, the quicker we can get ourselves in trouble. And it does reduce our ability to do the things that we're set out to do as a regulatory body. So, Lisa, I know it is probably going to be quite the undertaking, possibly, but if there's a way to redline the things that are just a duplication, to look at that and then to consider if legally we are able to have something else, because it sounds like we just want guidance on how to do the thing. And maybe doing a standard operating procedure instead of an article, something that is a guideline and not a hard rule. If there's something internally that we would be able to do instead of making hard and fast rules for our group.
If I may, Madam President, I think that's what we would always tell boards and commissions that we represent. Don't tie yourself, for example, to Robert's Rules of Order. You make it more difficult to conduct your meetings when you do that. Allow yourselves the broadest possible ability to act without tying yourselves to something that requires you to jump through several hoops to get your jobs done. And that I think was a great point. I thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Troy, you have your hand up?
I appreciate it. My concern with having Ms. Mendoza go through and redline is that sounds like it is all just to be redlined. My look at it is either that it is outdated and would need completely renovated anyway, or would need to be just stricken because the law has changed since it was implemented, or it is just a duplication of the current law. Those are the three categories. I don't see a fourth category of anything that's salvageable from them on my looking at them. I would not expect her to do all that. My concern is expecting her to do all that work, and that will be the recommendation on the back end of that. And if that is the case, then I think we look, instead of spending our time looking backwards, we look forwards as to what we want to do. If that's an SOP, if that is a, just something simple, if there's just a new set of articles that we want to create because we think that structure is important, I think we entertain that instead of sort of focusing backwards. At least that'd be my recommendation. Thanks.
Yeah, and it sounds like, Lisa, from what you're saying, that there would be an alternative to the articles. Would you clarify that?
I think just as Ms. Weber said, I mean, you can adopt a standard operating procedure. You can, the board can just discuss during its meeting, this is how we'd like to operate, and you can reduce that to writing And that would be simply as effective. You could decide, we want an education committee and it'll consist of the following board members. You can do any of those things and without having to rely on the articles. You are free as a board to act however you think you need to act within the confines of your statutory and regulatory authority.
Great.
So I'm not sure why you want to hamstring yourselves this way.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And I would suggest this go on the September board meeting agenda. Now that we have more information about it, so we can get the opinions of all of 7 of us, and then discuss that and come to some sort of a conclusion. That would be my suggestion. Anybody else? And we've got a couple of hands up here too.
Before the hand raises, yes, I agree with you, Madam President. I feel like that needs to go on the agenda so we can quickly discuss to resolve the articles issue.
Yeah, we just have a few months to move it ahead. And Amy, you had your hand up.
So I agree it needs to be on the September agenda, but I would caution us to recognize that previous boards put these in place because of some point of wisdom as to what was happening and how best to. So I would caution us not to literally throw out the baby with the bathwater, but to really look at why these were in place and what we could move forward. So not to dissolve it all, but to look before we move.
Yeah, and I would say it could well be, Amy, that the prior board that enacted these may not have had the same general counsel advice and guidance. That's what it sounds like to me. And Lisa, feel free to weigh in on that. It seems like there has been a change in the guidance to the board regarding committees due to liability coverage. Is that a correct understanding?
I think, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anybody who came before me. I think I just have a different level of experience and I have a different viewpoint about the ability of the board to act without needing any kind of confines on it. There may in fact be some things in here that are important to the board. I'm not suggesting that you throw everything out completely, but I think every member of the board is going to have to look at it and say, in addition to me, for my legal review, to look at it and say, okay, I still think this is important and here is the reason why. I'm not suggesting you should just completely gut something that you have all lived by, but I think there are real questions about whether or not you need all of it. And then also questions about whether or not you can do legally some of the things that are in it. And so it requires, I think, that in-depth discussion, something that we can't really do today.
The priority for me, and I'm sure for Amy as well, is our education committee. Right, Amy? We are looking at that and wanting to make sure that we have enough subject matter experts to really conduct that committee in a competent way. So what I would recommend is that all of us board members review those articles again, make notes, come prepared to our September board meeting to discuss them and come to, hopefully, we only have a few months to be in these positions, to come to a recommendation that we move ahead on. Is that agreeable to everyone? We do that? Any just further discussion? And then thank you. And then Adrian, you had your hand up as well. I'm looking to see if anyone else did.
Thank you, Madam President. This is just an amazing opportunity to see where you're at and where we're going as a board. And so this discussion is timely. One question I do have is more of a logistical thing. Is this something we leave posted out on the website right now, even though there's going to be discussion, or is it something that we should remove with the understanding that it's going to be reviewed?
Ooh, Lisa, can you advise us on that?
Well, I guess I would say, Madam Chair, I'm not so certain that we're actually following it now, or the board is following it now. And so it might be prudent to remove it if somebody asks for it, it's still a public record, it's still available. We should immediately provide it without any delay, so that people have access to it. But if we are not necessarily following it, then I'm not sure that it should be there. And
So,
I think honestly, it's a bit outdated, just a lot of the legal references.
but possibly have a note there
Right.
regarding something brief
Yes,
regarding
that
the
it will be
removal.
reviewed at the September meeting and it's
Yes.
available upon request.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. But we'll make that happen. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Adrian. Are we ready to move on to the acting executive administrator report? No further discussion? Okay, this has all been great so far. Adrian, I'll turn that over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'll attempt to be brief with this particular summary. I have reached my 124th day as your acting executive administrator and director of operations. And during that time, we've seen a lot of organizational, legislative and governance changes. And since assuming this new responsibility, my primary focus has really been to continue with the continuity and agency operations, while at the same time trying to make sure that we meet all the requirements of House Bill 2528 and Senate Bill 334, as well as transitioning to the new board and dealing with any staffing changes and recruitment. That still continues on. As you heard in my discussion a little bit earlier, we're assessing a lot of positions. Part of the reasons that some things have looked a little less posted is because we are doing some upgrades and some promotions internally and streamlining the operations. So in my September packet, I'll try to have a little bit better detail of who went where and what's still open. And hopefully, maybe even before then, we might have a new staff member as well. So we'll work on that transition, and I'll let you know as the meetings go on how that works. We're also modernizing all the agency operations. We're strengthening relationships with the stakeholders, as you heard earlier, and really just kind of fundamentally looking at everything that we're doing. Again, just like I said earlier, where we are, where we've been, and more importantly, maybe where we're going. I won't talk so much about the House Bill 2528 since we discussed that a little bit earlier, as well as the board governance. But some of the areas to maybe highlight of some internal things that we're looking at is we're looking at the licensure process and our customer service. There is something that I kind of want to do in terms of being able to get individuals able to answer the phone immediately. One of the requests that I had in my fiscal request was to create a small call center of maybe 1 or 2 people that would be available to be the frontline calls. These are positions that would be administrative, professional type positions. So they would be support and would be able to answer basic questions and help with online questions and those sorts of things, or route it to the appropriate areas so that when people call our office, they're not getting, the phone tree, getting themselves lost in the phone tree or getting voicemails. So that's one thing that I'm wanting to do. Another area is that we're looking at the applications and the questions that are on them so that we can prepare for the modernization of our licensing system. As you heard me allude a little bit earlier, that's going to be a rather large fiscal expense to us. It would be phase 3 of the project. We deployed the Evoke solution for investigative discipline, and eventually you all will see a board portal for the board members. But we now need to move the licensing system into that area, which will make it a fully harmonious environment as opposed to 2 separate entities. It is the same company. However, there is a rather large expense associated with that. I testified on several occasions over the last year and identified it in the agency 3-year IT plan for the past couple of years that this is something that's going to need to be done. The end of life status is in June of 2027. We have normally that would be the biggest project of the year by far, but it will be one of many. We also have our data center contract coming up, at which point the state has not renewed that contract with the group that we use. So we're either going to need to bid or potentially move the data center, which just for those that are on the board, without getting into great details of what it is, we have an incredibly sophisticated data center. It is top of the line as far as security and data redundancy, throughput, that sort of thing. It technically is, 150-foot underground in a mine in Kansas City, Lenexa. And we had a cybersecurity audit, and they rated it probably one of the best they've ever seen. So I'm not real excited to get rid of that because it is such a functional thing. It's also incredibly disruptive because you're basically moving everything. And so that's something we're working on. I'm hoping that the Office of Procurement can help us renew those contracts or do something so that that's not also an added initiative on the already burdened staff up here, in particular the IT folks. So that's one thing that we're doing. We're also looking at the workflows, and we've been hosting various types of trainings and sending people to different learning opportunities so that they can do some professional improvement, as well as looking at customer service. That's one thing that's been kind of on my radar, that I would like to have all staff go through essentially a customer service training so that, that's just something that becomes part of our processes as we bring on new people. We've continued to move towards greater utilization of nurses e-Notify, and Andy's been working real closely with the employers to get them subscribed. Thankfully, NCSBN, the employers, KHA, everybody, KSNA, everybody's been really helpful for us in getting this message out, which is greatly appreciated. If any of them are on the line, thank you for doing that for us. And then we're working through some more electronic processes of a system that we call SoftDocs. I did a presentation yesterday for other agencies around the country that are looking to improve their processes for electronic documentation. It's a system that we use, and we're looking to expand it into what's called our individual offering approval, or what we call an IOA form in the C&E department, which Janelle's been working with Anthony on that particular project. So that's underway. On the cybersecurity and business continuity front, we've submitted the COOP plan and received 100% approval. Kudos to Andy for getting that done for us. It's really great to have that. That's our document. That's essentially guidance if worst case scenario happens to the agency, tornado hits us and we have to relocate and stand up operations outside of the Land and State Office building. It's our guide. And so to get a good rating on that again is wonderful. From a cybersecurity front, we had a legislative post audit last year that was very in-depth. We had a relatively, actually a really good review. Some little things, they're always going to find something. And so we worked on that front to tighten that up and have been, I'm not going to talk about it in a public meeting because it deals with cybersecurity, but I will tell you that the IT department is putting in some very sophisticated technology with the assistance of the Kansas Information Security Office. And we are ahead of schedule, and we are getting some really good ratings out of our hardening of our systems, which is a state imperative. And so that's something that we take a lot of pride in, but nobody's ever going to see it, kind of thing. So it's like having a security guard and not having any security incidents. So knock on wood that all of our plans continue to work out well. Let's see what else. From a budget and financial planning standpoint, the fact that we, in the articles, one area that we used to have is we did used to have a finance committee where we discussed the finances of the agency. I'm still trying to figure out how to best do that now that we don't have a committee. Maybe one of the things that I can do is bring it forward in just a board report after the next board meeting will be right at the end of when we're submitting. So I'm not sure whether or not we'll have all of it available right then, but I could try to get exactly, where we're at and let you know from a fee use perspective of items that are needed. For example, the licensing system and areas that we need to continue on, which is just our basic operations and things that have a cost associated with them. From a legislative and governmental relations area, we've been working, as you heard, we work very closely with the Attorney General's office, the State Office of Personnel, legislative research, the finance staff, the governor's office. Some of our legislative officials have been wonderful to work with. A couple in particular have been very helpful to me, which I greatly value. And so that's a kind of a front. We're just making ourselves known. We're trying to get out there and greet and meet people and do the best that we can for the citizens and nurses of Kansas. On a national level, I still continue to be very engaged on the national front. I'm on the Leadership Succession Committee for the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. Our annual meeting is next week. So myself, Janelle, and a couple members of the board will be traveling up to Chicago to be at their delegate assembly. It's also their annual conference for the Nurse Licensure Compact, at which point I'm going to serve as the commissioner. So anything that comes out of that, I'll bring back to the September committee so that the board knows of any changes if there are any. And really, we're working on the modernization in our organizational culture. Part of looking at the positions themselves is to look at the org chart and determine whether or not that still makes sense. There's some areas that I really want to change. And so that's part of my September proposal that I think just the various ways that some of the departments report positions and report up to could be streamlined a little bit and help us work better as a culture. I'm very proud of the staff. Nobody has said no to anything I ask. They're all very willing to help. And even some are telling me, I need to get more sleep at night instead of answering it on in the morning. But I'm a bit of a night owl. So, but that's been very appreciated, that all of them are stepping up. They're doing what they can with what we have, and they're doing it to the best of their ability. So kudos to them, and thank you to the board for stepping up, joining these meetings at last minute when we need to get something important through. This is really critical time for us, and I think we're making the best effort that we possibly can and creating a more modern, responsive, transparent, and efficient board of nursing. It doesn't just support our mission of public protection. It makes us a better agency in the whole and better support the citizens and the nurses of this and the educational and employers, everybody of this state. So with that, I will bring a more detailed report with examples of some statistics of some things that we've been doing at our September meeting. But until then, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right. And before I, Amy, ask you to respond, Adrian, I do want to say that it does seem to me that you have a forward-thinking agency staff. And then the impetus of what happened with House Bill 2528 and Senate Bill 334 has actually moved things even further ahead, I think, with, like you said, streamlining and looking at some updates that needed to happen. So I want to say again, thank you. All right, Amy, I don't know if anyone else had their hand up, but I see yours.
I really appreciated the report. I have a question about the Finance Committee. Was that dissolved, or is it simply not staffed? Is there a reason to not have a Finance Committee?
Well, when we went through the reconstitution of the board, we grabbed the two most important committees that we needed at the time, not knowing whether or not we were going to have, at one point, we weren't sure if we were only going to have 6 board members. We got 7. I didn't know at the time whether or not we were going to grow anymore. And so that first meeting that we had was about a few weeks ago now, was really to address some emergency type situations. And traditionally, that meeting or the Finance Committee would meet at those quarterly in-person meetings. We didn't always have these special board meetings in between unless something really serious came up. So this is a little bit unique, and that we're just trying to address some things that are hot topic. Certainly, finances and fiduciary responsibility, it's my belief is of the boards, and quite honestly, the people we serve have a right to know how we're using our funds. I was the treasurer of the National Council of State Boards of Nursing for a long time. I was the chair of their finance committee. It was in their bylaws that they had a finance committee. It's something I strongly believe in, just because this is not our funds, this is the funds of the people. And so, you know, if not a formal committee to make myself feel comfortable, I kind of want to report out something, and I can do it to the full board if that's the case. I have no issues with that. It's all transparent. We have great suggestions too. When we had finance committee, there was always a couple people from the public that came in and had really good comments. I mean, I valued it. So I'm willing, I think we should honestly do some sort of report.
Madam Chair, if I might, just, this is Lisa Mendoza with the AG's office. That most other agencies don't have separate committees for this. They simply report all their financial information at every board meeting. So every board member has it and is aware of it and can ask questions about it. And there's no reason to pigeonhole it in a particular committee when the whole board is entitled to hear about that information. Just wanted you to be aware of how other boards and commissions handle that. Thank you.
And we
Thank
had
you,
a
Lisa.
component of risk management in it for the past year, where it was mostly in terms of cybersecurity and those sorts of things. I personally think it would be better served just to give to the whole board and we just do a brief little report out at each meeting. It's something that Andy and I actually were looking at putting some of the elements in our annual reporting too. We've seen a couple other agencies that did something similar and liked kind of how it looked. So, you know, it's fully transparent. I believe it's an important step for any board to share the finances, especially when we're going to be needing some substantial amount of it. That's the board's responsibility to approve it.
Anyone else have any thoughts, discussions on that among our board members?
No.
What do we think about having it just a report off? Yes, Tasha?
I didn't have anything. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay.
I think a report would be fine. So that way we can actually, you know, like have that transparency, because I agree this is not just our funds. This is everyone. So I think that
I
seems
agree.
reasonable.
That was one of my questions for later and I agree with Lisa and Ashley. I think it should come every board meeting.
Okay.
I did have a question for Blenda. Blended, what's your thought on that? You were on that committee.
I agree. I think that it should be in front of the whole board. I think it's important that everybody is aware of what goes on, where the money goes, how it comes in.
Okay. Thank you.
And if we might keep this in mind when we get to I believe it's the next section of the agenda, I do have a question about it for the public comment area as well.
Yep. Are we ready to move to that? Thank you, everyone. And Adrian, do you want to go ahead and we'll move to that and then have our general counsel as well.
Oh, sure. Historically, we've had an opportunity for public comments. From time to time, there's a discussion topic of some sort that is brought before the board. And historically, there was a time allocated for it at the end of a meeting, usually. In terms of this finance example, I think that's a wonderful time for the public to be able to ask questions. Like I said, some have done it in the past, and I found it very valuable. And even learned things myself when it was discussed. So certainly this is that opportunity. And I don't know if Ms. Mendoza, you have any thoughts of how other boards use this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's Lisa Mendoza with the Attorney General's office. So public comment is designed for members of the public to tell the board what they're thinking. It is not designed to be generally speaking, an interactive process where board members can, or members of the public can question members of the board or do anything of that nature. It's designed for the public to have their comments, and the board can listen, and then the board can decide to act or not act on any of those comments. But the Open Meetings Act does not require that the board provide public comment, but you are responsible ultimately to the public. And so it does make some sense for the board to listen to what the public has to say. But it's not designed for members of the public to ask questions of the board or challenge anything that the board is discussing at that particular moment. The public can have a comment. Typically, it's limited to 3 or 5 minutes, and then the board just simply takes those into account however it would like to. Again, it's not required to have public comment, but if you're going to have public comment, then I did put together some language. Adrian, if you could share your screen with that, just something that you could put on your agenda that would account for how you would view public comment and what you would want people in the public to know. And typically, boards or commissions do ask for whoever wants to make public comment to at least provide their name so that they can be recognized in the minutes as having provided public comment and what it is. And then, again, they get to talk, you listen, and then you move on to the next person or you move on to the rest of your agenda. So Adrian, if you could share your screen.
Colton, are you able to pull that up? He's our AV guy here.
Okay. I didn't know who was doing that.
He's got control.
I wasn't able to get it to show up for the YouTube nicely, and all my stuff's in dark mode, so unless you can read that.
Let me see if.
Unfortunately, I only got it like 20 minutes before the meeting.
Let's see. How can I do this?
Okay, so I have it. So this is what my suggestion was to put on the board's agenda, and I'm sorry that you don't have it and can't see it. But
there we go.
Are you able to do it,
I'll
Adrian?
post it in a little chat here. There you go. In the little Zoom chat. I think everybody can see that.
I see. Okay. So this is the language that I was suggesting to the board to just tell people that they can engage in public comment, that the board will accept public comment, that you expect orderly and respectful discussion or comments. And if somebody wants to have or submit a public comment, that they just need to tell you 24 hours in advance so that you're prepared if anybody has comments or want to look into something, that you have the opportunity to do that. So my recommendation is that if you're going to allow public comment, that you put something like this at the beginning of your agenda so the public is on notice that they can make public comment. And then by next meeting, I'm sure Adrian will have this posted on Public Square so that the public will be able to see this and know what to expect in terms of public comment. It's a little bit more difficult on Zoom. It will require Adrian or Colton to control, who is permitted to speak, but it can still occur if the board wants to. If the board does not want to, it's not required to by the Open Meetings Act.
And Madam President, I'm not sure if this is showing, I did the little text thing. I'm not sure whether or not it's showing for the public or not. So in lack of that, I'll just go ahead and read it here. Okay. It's a public comment. The board conducts meetings in compliance with the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and expects orderly and respectful discussions. Individuals or groups wishing to address the board during the public comment period should submit their requests prior to the meeting date. This request must be received at the KSBN office 24 hours prior to the meeting date.
You don't have to make a decision today. You all can think about it until your next meeting and then decide then. You don't have to decide at the next meeting. You can simply continue to go forward as you have been, and that's not a problem either.
you had mentioned, Lisa, that there was not a coma requirement to do this. Is there
Correct.
also not a statutory requirement under our
There is no
creation law?
statutory.
Perfect. Okay.
I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate it. No, you're good.
I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. There is no statutory requirement for it under the COMA or under the board statutes. So
Thank you.
the board has not been doing this up to this point. My only reason for addressing it was just to basically give some order and form to it so the public is aware of whether or not they can do it. But you are not required to do it. And I have no particular suggestion one way or another, whether or not you should do it. If you want to do it, then this is something that I think you should post in your agenda so that people are aware of the ability to do it. But other than that, I mean, it's entirely up to the board how they would like to proceed.
My apologies, Madam President. I didn't mean to bump in either. I should have waited to be called on. But my other question would be for Adrian then. What is the current process that you guys use if you receive similar comment directly to the office to then inform the board that there's, a concern or whatever? Is there any kind of formal process now for that?
Or if a concern is brought forward about the board or about like the actual board members?
About anything that would be brought up to say, like, is there a process currently that would take the place of this, right? Whereas someone could contact the nursing board directly, that would be brought to you or to whomever it was appropriate to get to, and then eventually filter to the board. Like, if we didn't have this, is there a process in place that you can think of that sort of fills the same?
Well, we have all of our our contact information, and although we are kind of retooling that, currently all of our contact information is available online, and we've received proper training as far as the difference between an information request and a core request. But if a complaint comes in, depending on the nature of the complaint, we get things as remedial as like, hey, this link is broken on your website, to something maybe more serious. And so if it's something that rose to the level of needing board attention, certainly that would be brought forth. The board president and myself have at least biweekly meetings. That's been historically done for years now. The exec as well, whoever was the exec. And so any sort of issues that arose, we would make that known and deal with it appropriately. But if I'm understanding.
Yeah. No, that's my question, is that there kind of is a process that you're currently using. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if I might, you're muted, Madam Chair. But if I might, this is Lisa Mendoza with the AG's office. I think just for general comments, I'm going to say it doesn't seem like there is a real process. There are processes for specific complaints and how to handle them. There are processes for questions about the website and what to do about them, but there's not really a process in place for just general public commentary about how the board is doing or what the board is doing. And that's what this is. If the board wants to have that kind of public comment directly to it, this is what this language is designed to address. If the board doesn't want to have that, is satisfied with however things get to staff and they don't necessarily hear about them, or only the board president hears about them, then we can continue with the same process. It's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. What do we think about putting that on the agenda for the September meeting as well, considering the length of this meeting? And then we'll recognize Amy. And I think Janelle had her hand up as well. So we'll start with Amy, but feel free to give comment if you want to put that on the September board meeting agenda as well.
So yes, I'd like it on the September board meeting. But I would suggest that the nurses we serve would consider this a public forum. And I think that we should consider that perspective very carefully before we took any move. It's good to have a process, but if somebody really cares enough to show up, we should hear them. So,
Thank you, Amy.
you bet.
Janelle, did you still have your hand up?
Oops. Wrong. Sorry, wrong button. I just wanted to comment, that the board has allowed for public comment in the past. We have had people request to address the board, and that has been granted. I will have to admit, I'm not sure where that is, because I remember when I first started, that was something that was spoken about, and people had the opportunity to do that. But sometimes it was a matter of timing. If there was time for the public comment, and we had somebody who had requested it. The other thing I was going to say is that in terms of nurses who might have, the board gets a lot of not just complaints, but input from different sectors of nursing. We've had questions come in from facilities, from educators, we try to address those in the past, we've addressed those with committees. If there are certain things, they can always address a letter to the board or something to the board that gets something on an agenda. If there are concerns that need to be addressed, and the board chairs have always had the ability to add those to agendas when there are things like that they have wanted to do. So I just wanted to say that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Janelle. And then Adrian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just to make a brief little comment about the public comment. I believe in open government, and I believe citizens have a right to bring issues towards the people that serve them, even staff, the board. That's my own personally held belief. But I think it's important here in the context of House Bill 2528, where it was brought up about being able to speak to the board. And so I think maybe having that consideration in mind before you make a decision one way or the other is critically important. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Adrian. Any additional comments on that? Well, we're putting it on our agenda for September meeting, but feel free, this is our time to make comments and discussion. Nope. Well, these are all great thoughts on this topic. The approval of the 7/20/26 minutes, I would suggest we move that to the September meeting. Is there a thought on that? That's just because it's going to take some time for all of you to review the minutes that didn't have them, and to make sure that you did not have a comment. Okay, Ashley?
I do have a comment because I was able to read them briefly. The very first line, the time is wrong. It went from 1:01 p.m. to 12:49 p.m. So I
There you
do
go.
think
Great.
that we do need to move that approval to the next meeting in September, so that way we can make sure that it's reviewed accurately.
Right.
Submit it.
Right, because these are important. These are public record.
Agreed.
And I do think it's important that all 7 of us have an opportunity to not feel rushed and to adequately review them and make comment on it. So we'll move that. And then I am not aware that we have an executive session. Adrian is shaking his head, Janelle is shaking hers. So we will not have an executive session. So the last item, and I'm just going to list the items that I have on for the September meeting, and then I'm going to turn it to Adrian because he had some additional items. So what I have on there is we have a standing update on House Bill 2528. By that point, I think all of us would like to know the outcome of the voids and what happened with that. I have asked that we have a brief Cora update to know if there's any variances that we need to be aware of. That is such an important topic. And then, as you said, Adrian, there will be the National Council State Board of Nursing meeting and some important issues discussed there. And we would want an update on that. And then we will be in discussion about the public comment. And then, of course, we'll review the 7/20/26 board meeting minutes along with the minutes from this meeting. So anybody else have any thoughts or comments before we turn this over to Adrian, who has some items that he has planned for that meeting as well?
We were also, Madam Chair, Elisa Mendoza with the AG's office, we were also going to discuss the articles.
Thank you.
Oh, how did I had that written down and I don't know, I skipped it on my list. Thank you. Yes, the articles, very important. And Ashley, was that your comment?
That was going to be
Yeah.
my question.
I
if
know, I
that was
actually had
something that
written
was
it down on
missing.
my
Yeah.
list, but somehow skipped it when I read it. Okay, any other comments on adding to our agenda? If not, I'll turn it over to Adrian to finish that out for us. Thank you,
Thank
Adrian.
you, Madam. Sure, certainly. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. A couple more items that I heard chime in, and maybe you said them and I just missed it, was the finance report. I think we'll just do that. And then the exec report, I'm going to make a more formal update. So we'll call it, I guess we could just still call it the exec report. Also to have on your radar, I believe that's the meeting that we have our statutory responsibility to do the election of officers. Although we just kind of went through that, we're going to have to go through it again, as I understand. And potentially the delegations. Is that correct, Lisa? Maybe not.
Your delegations are fine.
Okay.
If you elect your officers, that is just officers. That doesn't change the composition of the board or your committees or anything. That's just who is
Okay.
going to serve as your officers. So your delegations will be fine. Under
Great.
your finance report, I don't know if you need to have the board approve any budget submission, but that's, I think, where you would also discuss
Yeah.
the budget, because I think that's one of the things the board should probably be aware of.
Yes, thank you. That's a great. Yeah. The other topic that I guess I just want the board's feedback to see, this is again the way we had always done things, so I don't know if you want to still continue this or not. But at the beginning of the meetings, usually in conjunction with the exec's report, which is now a little bit lower on the agenda, but we used to have staff reports. Typically that was the investigative, education, licensing, myself. Sometimes Andy would have an update. So I don't know do you still want to do those, or do you just want us to submit a report? And if there's questions, to have questions other than the executive report, certainly open to what the will of the board is and what makes the best use of your time.
Well, my vote is to have those reports, but we'll hear from everyone else
I agree
at
with
our
Ruth.
quarterly meetings.
As a new member, I think it would be nice to at least hear it the first time, and then we can review it from there, certainly, so we're not duplicating or spending extra time that's unnecessary.
Great. Okay, we will add that to the agenda. Hearing no objections, we'll have staff do that. And the other topic of discussion is, depending on how long the board meeting might take, we would like to do traditionally when we would bring on new board members. Usually it was staggered. It wasn't all members at once. We would do an orientation. Usually it was before the first meeting that they would attend. And a lot of what it would go into is some of the fiduciary responsibilities that COMA and CORA was usually part of that. We would talk about each department would kind of come and do a little presentation of what their main objectives were and what their projects have been and their responsibilities for their various committees and that sort of thing. We also talked about the history of the board, some of the important logistics, just the basic stuff like we'll put up a parking meter for you to park at, that sort of thing. We would do the orientation and then just your role as a board member. We didn't get as much of an opportunity to do that because you guys got appointed and then we immediately had to have a special board meeting. So we wanted to potentially think about having some sort of a opportunity to do that for the board, to do some sort of a presentation and to give you just a high level of what we are and what we've done and where we're heading, more so than in a formal meeting. Obviously, this will be an open session. Anybody can attend, but just outside of the basic board meeting, maybe it's something that's tacked on at the end of the board meeting or something of that effect.
Madam Chair, if I may, it would be if board members are there, it's part of the board meeting. It's not outside of a board meeting. It is part of the board meeting if the board wants that. That's just
like a special meeting or either
it's
separate
not a special, it's not separate. No, it's just part of the board meeting. It's just part of the agenda.
Okay. Yeah. So whichever way works best, is that something that would be beneficial to the board? Would you like to dedicate the second portion of the meeting itself for such a endeavor?
And Adrian, I think it would be helpful if you could send information as to what would be included in that and the length of time. I know that that has been discussed in the past, board member responsibilities and things like that. It didn't take a terribly long time. I'm just not sure all that you have in mind if it was part of a board meeting.
Well, as Lisa alluded to, in the past, it was usually we got one person added and we do the orientation. This is a little different than what we've ever done. It even comes down to very perfunctory things like teaching them how to get on their laptop and that sort of thing. I mean, obviously we could set up sessions to teach people how to, send them instructions or whatever on how to log into the email.
Some of that can be reduced to writing. And provided to the board. It doesn't have to, have a full verbal presentation just in order to save board member time. If there was an orientation, then I think it would be important to just clarify for the board, at least from a legal perspective, what their obligations are under law, what protections they have under law. And that's something that we can do. We can move through rather quickly. We can give you something in writing that you would also be able to review. But that's, from our perspective, that's what the orientation would be. Many of the other things I think can be just simply reduced to writing and provided to the board and allow them in advance. And that would allow the board to ask questions.
Right, like the responsibilities of the board. I've seen that document. It's 2 pages. So those kinds of things I think would be helpful.
We have a document that, now it's a bit outdated now that things have really changed. So I've tasked the leadership team, we're going to do some internal looking so that the next board will have a much more formal document. But the one that we have now still it's not out of, it's not irrelevant. It's just a little bit out of date now. And a lot of the things, like Lisa said, the signing on the email, those sorts of things have always been included, but we just offered a session if they needed some one-on-one, tech help kind of thing. But we can certainly do that outside of a session if somebody needs help.
And then would we also have a swearing in?
Oh, yes.
Give the pen.
We have a little pendant that you get, and that we try to do a nice little formal reading of something and then get a picture. That's something I would like to do just for historical purposes, if anything, is to get a picture of the board. It would be nice to have that available for our newsletter and those sorts of things, but also for the history of the board. This is an important time. We're evolving, and I think we need to document it as well for the history of the agency.
Yeah, so that can go on our September agenda. Right. Any further discussion on our September board agenda?
I'm sorry, I do have one question for Adrian. This is Jobin. Regarding your report, will you have a staffing update to include like vacancies and maybe I missed that, but vacancies, postings? Okay.
Yes. I'm hoping by that time I will have approvals where I need them. And maybe there may actually be some posted by that time. But we're right in the middle of, they're looking at it and they can't tell me if or when that's going to be done. But yes, I'll have a full debrief of all the positions that are open. And I kind of want to do a bit of a visionary of where I think maybe what we have right now and where maybe we need to go. Is an agency, including potential requests of the legislature that we fulfill more positions so that we can appropriately carry out the mission of the agency.
Any other
You know,
comments?
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one case in point, I always tell Janelle to look both ways twice when she crosses the street because she is the education department. So, it's like, that's one area, that's a risk.
Yep.
Looks like Sam might have her question.
Hi, thank you, Madam President. And I apologize that my camera's not on. I'm actually sitting in the office and I don't know why it won't come on. So I did have a question for Adrian. If we were going to try and schedule a meeting of the Void Committee now that we've gotten that straightened out.
Yes, thank you. Is that something we can try to schedule via email and hopefully get a quick response back from the members that are available for that committee so that we can get that going? Because we do have a very tight timeline on that. Is it, or we can discuss it here. Either or. I'm okay either way.
Samantha, your
Members of the
audio
committee.
is off.
Either way is fine for me. Email's fine, so we can maybe try and coordinate schedules, or if people would rather do it now, that's fine too. Leave that up to the Void Committee, how they'd like to handle it.
And this will be a public meeting. We'll post it, and then I think they call it not a legal expert. What's it called? A CAPA? Is that right? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not a. That's not one of my.
Quasi judicial meeting, it'd be called. And
There you go.
into quasi judicial session.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I said.
I think email would be fine for me to decide. So that way we can
You
move
check
things
it out.
along and we can check schedules.
Okay. We will get that out ASAP. Thank you.
Perfect.
That's great. Thank you,
Thanks, Amy.
Samantha. That was important. Very important.
Just, Madam Chair, if I might, just a reminder, when you're scheduling it via email, you can talk about who is available, the times you're available, and agree on a time, but you can't discuss the contents that you will have. You can say, I would like this on the agenda. That's as far as you can go. You cannot discuss anything else in the emails, just as a reminder. That protects you under the COMA.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we'll just keep it strictly as like, what dates is everybody open? And we will use the BC field so they can't reply back to all. We've got a little language we put on all our emails about that. So we'll keep it strictly
Great.
where people need to be.
All right, are we at the point where we could adjourn? It's been a long meeting. It's been a really good meeting. A lot of important things have been discussed. But I think we might be there. So Lisa, remind me, do we need a motion to adjourn or can we? I didn't think so, but I wanted to be sure. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Until next time. All righty, bye-bye.
Bye.